are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello, welcome to Jiggers' Place. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and maybe you're looking at me and you say, no, you're not, because you always wear a tie or a suit or a tie and a suit. And yes, that's true. I almost always do, but today, since I'm taking you to the South Seas, I thought I should kind of dress the part. So I have my white linen pants on and my Hawaiian shirt, and we're going to go casual and get a bit of the South Sea vibe going here on Jiggers' Place. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'm glad to be here. It was a rush getting here, so that's why I'm a little bit, as we say in Yiddish, vermished. But on today's show, I'm going to be talking about one of the great stories of naval history, the Mutiny on the Bounty, and it's been told in books and movies, and yet it is a true story, and I'm going to talk about that in a larger context, as you'll see. And so, in honor of the Mutiny on the Bounty and its major port call in Tahiti, collaborating with ChatGPT, I came up with a cocktail called a Tahitian Breeze. It's a rum-based cocktail, and in fact, we're going to use light rum. This is the regular, the rack rum that I have. This is just good old Bacardi white rum. Very good for mixing. Not something you would drink neat like you would a whiskey, but it's great for mixing. And then we're going to use dark rum as well. So this is Bacardi Select. And then we're going to use coconut cream. So I've got Coco Lopez, and it's nice and liquid now. I keep a pretty cool home, and so it was kind of solidified, but it's easy. You just put it in some warm water, and it liquefies right up. And then some pineapple juice, good old Dole pineapple juice, and some lime juice. And then we're going to put in a dash of vanilla. This happens to be Tahitian pure vanilla extract, and a dash of Angostura bitters. But as I was getting ready, I was thinking, instead of the regular Angostura bitters, I'm going to use the cocoa bitters. Now, if you're not a chocolate fanatic like me, so you may not know, but cocoa without sugar is bitter. That's why they add sugar to it. So I think we'll give this a try. And then as a garnish, we're going to grate some nutmeg on top. These are actual nutmegs. They're pretty cool. Yeah, I got some stuff from the label. They're actually pretty cool looking. To show you one. So they look like a nut. So anyway, we're going to use that for a garnish. Okay, so we've got our shaker with ice, and we're going to start out with 2 ounces of white rum. And let's see. Okay, yeah. Okay, so we're going to fill this one up. That'll be 2 ounces. No, I don't think I've made a rum cocktail on any of the Jiggers' Place shows yet. So this will be kind of a new thing. Okay, and then an ounce of dark rum. Okay, so let's see. That's going to be. Where's the marker? Yeah. Okay. There we go. Oops. Oh, okay. Well, we're going to use a little bit more than an ounce. I've overfilled it. It doesn't have to necessarily be that exact. Okay, and now going to put in an ounce of coconut cream. Maybe I should have mixed this up a little bit more. Uh-oh. Okay, well, it is what it is. So Okay, so coconut cream. And I think it's a half an ounce of lime juice. Now, always better to, oh wait, I'm sorry, pineapple juice, right? Yeah, 2 ounces of pineapple juice. I mean, it's always better to use fresh juices. But, look, we're all busy. And so, I've been drinking Dole pineapple juice since I was a kid. I love it. It's great stuff. And so, why not? So we're going to use some. When I make blue Hawaiians, this is the pineapple juice I use. So it's good stuff. Okay, and then a half an ounce of lime juice. Oops. Whoops. Okay, well, I guess that kind of does it for the coconut cream. That's okay. Okay, so the lime juice and a splash of it says vanilla syrup, but I think you can use just vanilla extract. It won't be as sweet. I don't know about you, but I'm not super big on super sweet things. Okay, and then as we always do, we're going to shake. Give it icy down. Let all the flavors mix. Let them dilute so that they bring the flavors out. Okay, and there's lots of fancy ways that bartenders shake these things, but just as long as you shake it, you can see the outside of the shaker getting nice and frosty. We're going to go for a few more seconds. And, yeah. Okay. Oh, you know what? I forgot to. I realized I forgot to put in. Oh no, that's right. Yeah, the bitters goes on top. Okay, so a couple more seconds. And I've got my cocktail glass. This is the large economy size because I know I was going to be thirsty because I exercised right before I started the show. Okay, we're going to pour this in. And it's got a nice sort of creamy looking appearance, which is good. Okay, and we're going to just shake a little bitters on top. There we go. And last but not least, we're going to grate a little nutmeg, and I have my little miniature grater here. Smells so good. Okay, let's give this a try. Here we go. Ah, yes. Lots and lots of layers. Okay, well, I'll meet you over on the couch. Here we go. So we're getting toward the end of the week and nice time to relax. I have to have another sip of this cocktail. It really is good. Well done, ChatGPT. With no help from me this week. So it's almost winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. It'll be winter on Saturday. That'll be the winter solstice, the longest day of the year. And of course,
In the southern hemisphere, it's summertime. So Saturday will be the summer solstice. The winter solstice is the shortest day of the year. Pardon me. But in the southern hemisphere, Saturday will be the summer solstice, which is the longest day of the year. And although I can't claim that it's cold here in Los Angeles, yesterday it was 80 degrees in where I live. Nonetheless, the mornings have been chilly, and as we progress through December and into January, hopefully it's going to be colder. And on cold nights especially, and in particular on cold Friday nights, one of my favorite things to do is to turn on my fireplace, which is right over there. I can't burn wood in my fireplace because the chimney's messed up, but I have an electric fireplace that gives off heat, and sit back with either a detective novel, like one of the Charlie Chan novels that I talked about, I think 2 weeks ago. And in fact, that's what I was reading last Friday night, or an adventure novel. And the colder it is, the more enjoyable an adventure novel can be. So whether it's Robert Louis Stevenson, whether it's Rudyard Kipling, whether it's Norman and Hall, who we'll talk about in a few minutes. Reading about, or another one is Heart of Darkness, Conrad, and one I read a couple weeks ago, John McNabb, it was a novel from the 1920s. So it's it takes us away from where we are, puts us into another environment, allows us to forget our workaday troubles, our workaday cares, even if they're not particularly troubles, and sort of immerse ourselves in another world. And that's why ever since I could read pretty much, I've loved to read adventure stories. The people I've mentioned so far are all English writers. Of course, there's what's his name, White Fang, and oh shoot, I'm going up there. He's an American writer who wrote about life in Alaska and places like that. But in any event, no matter where you read about, these books take us away. But far and away, my favorite adventure novel is Mutiny on the Bounty, and I've had this copy of Mutiny on the Bounty since I was a boy. I probably read it for the first time when I was maybe, I don't know, 11 or 12, something like that. This is a Scholastic Book Service edition, and this particular book was printed in 1962, although the original Mutiny on the Bounty was published in 1932. And it's so, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story of Mutiny on the Bounty, I will tell you about it in a few minutes. But before I talk about the story, I also what I didn't know when I first read it was the Mutiny on the Bounty was part of a trilogy called the Bounty Trilogy, and the three books are Mutiny on the Bounty, Men Against the Sea, and it's the story of what happens after Captain Bligh and those who go with him are set adrift in one of the ship's boat. And the third is Pitcairn's Island, which tells about what happens to Christian and the other mutineers who go with him. So you can see it's in this edition, it's a long book. It's, I think, almost 700 pages. 691 pages. But it's wonderful, and I've read the trilogy many times as well, although I've read Mutiny on the Bounty more time. Now, these are a fictionalized account of the historical event. Pardon me while I have more cocktail. So the actual historical mutiny on the Bounty, the voyage took place in 1789, and William Bligh, who was actually a lieutenant. Okay, so that's pretty low rank. That's a junior officer in the British Navy, in the Royal Navy. So he was given the task of sailing His Majesty's ship Bounty from England to Tahiti to get breadfruit trees that he was then supposed to transport to the Caribbean. And the purpose of that was breadfruit was a nutritious food, but it was a very inexpensive food. And the idea was it would be fed to slaves. So interestingly enough, although slavery was a factor in the United States, most of the slaves transported from Africa actually went to the Caribbean and South America. So the plantation owners there were looking for a cheap way to feed them. And so Lieutenant Bligh was given this mission, and he was given the ship HMS Bounty in which to fulfill it. It was a small ship. It wasn't even, I don't think it was even a frigate. I believe it was a brig, which is a two-masted ship. And the voyage started in 1787, and he left with his crew. And his number two on the boat was a man named Fletcher Christian, who was a very good friend of Bligh's, or so Bligh thought. And what happened was the Bounty sailed to Tahiti. Now, life on an English ship, especially at this time, was very harsh. The discipline was extremely strict. And if you can think about it, you have a captain who's surrounded by a crew of very strong, tough men. And the only way he has of controlling them, at least in the way the Navy looked at it then, was through very strict discipline and harsh punishment for infractions that violated the discipline. And so indeed, William Bligh meted out punishment. But the interesting thing was, in some ways, he was a somewhat forward-looking officer as well. So, for example, he believed in maintaining the welfare of his crew, and being on a small ship for months on end. They're oftentimes led to poor morale. So he had engaged a piper who would pipe songs, piper like a fife and drum player kind of piper, and the men would dance and these kind of things. And so they get to Tahiti, and then once they're at Tahiti, he has to negotiate with the Tahitian king in order to get the breadfruit trees, and they have to be dug up and they have to be packed with earth in such a way that they'll survive the voyage from Tahiti to the Caribbean. And the sailors on the ship, really for the first time in their lives, experienced not just freedom, because when they were on shore, they certainly were as free as any other Englishmen, but a sort of almost libertine lifestyle that was quite common in the Southeast, but was not at all like life back in England. And so, they were involved with women, and they had all the food they could want, and water from the springs, and they lived a life that none of them really had ever experienced before. And so once all the breadfruit trees were collected, it was time now to get the men back on board the ship and to continue on to Jamaica. And the sailors did because they had lived this very easy, undisciplined life for so long. They did not take well to the reimposition of discipline by Lieutenant Bligh, and there was grumbling and dissatisfaction, and finally, on I think it was April. I've got my notes here from April 28th of 1789, led by Fletcher Christian, a large part of the crew mutinied against William Bligh, and Fletcher Christian didn't want him killed, but they set William Bligh adrift in one of the small boats that were on the ship, and they took the HMS Bounty back to Tahiti, and they left Bligh in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in this really tiny boat, and with a number of other people, and I think there was a total of 18 people with Bligh, and they sailed off. And amazingly, and it shows the quality of seamanship that Lieutenant Bligh possessed. They made it back to shore. They made it to, I believe, Jakarta, in what is now Indonesia, and eventually got back to England. And Bligh was given another ship to go after the mutineers. Now, I'm sure you can appreciate the British Admiralty sided with Captain Bligh. I should mention, by the way, that in this context, captain just means the most senior officer on board the ship, as opposed to rank. He was a lieutenant, but he was the most senior officer on the ship, and so he was called captain, and that's why you hear him called Captain Bligh. And Bligh, on his new ship, sailed back to Tahiti. They caught a number of the mutineers. In the meantime, Christian had sailed the Bounty back to Tahiti, and when the Tahitian king found out what he had done, he basically told him to get out of here, because he didn't want the British coming and holding him responsible for sheltering a mutineer. And so Christian and many of the mutineers, though not all of them, some of the mutineers chose to stay in Tahiti, but the rest of them, along with Fletcher Christian, sailed off. They eventually landed at Pitcairn Island, where quite some time later, Christian's descendants were found. They did take some of the Tahitian women with them, and that's why, they had children, et cetera, et cetera. The mutineers that were found in Tahiti were brought back to England for trial. 3 were executed. Several others were pardoned, and Lieutenant Bligh resumed his naval career. And so that's the actual history of what happens. Now, in the book Mutiny on the Bounty, the story is told through the eyes of a young midshipman by the name of Byam. And Byam is the son of a friend of Lieutenant Bligh, and his father Byam's father has died, and so Bligh offers to take Byam on as a midshipman and help him develop a career in the Navy. And that was a somewhat common thing for especially middle-class sons to do when they had no other prospects. And this is, of course, what entranced me as a young man, 12, 13 years old. So Byam gets to Tahiti, and he meets a beautiful Tahitian girl who turns out to be the daughter of, I think, the king, and they fall in love and get married. And as a side note, ever since I read Mutiny on the Bounty the first time, I wanted to go to Tahiti. And when I got out of college and after I worked for the law firm for a while, I went to work for a real estate company, and finally was able to save enough money to go to Club Med in Tahiti. And I went there wanting to meet my Tahitian princess. And the funny thing was, as this turned out, while most of the people who worked at Club Med were Americans and Europeans, there was one young woman there who was native Tahitian, and we hit it off. I spoke a little bit of French. She spoke a little bit of English. And so we would sit and help each other learn the other language. And the Tahitian men would come around, and they were really jealous that she wanted her spend her time with me. And so they were always trying to get her attention, and she was telling them, go away. And at the end of my trip, I had to say goodbye. I came back to Los Angeles, and the next day I got a call from her, of all things, and she wanted to come to the United States. So that was my big chance to, marry my Tahitian princess. But unfortunately, I could not afford to bring her to the United States. So that was the end of that. But it was always my fantasy to meet my Tahitian princess. And so the pain of the bounty crewman leaving, you see it through the eyes of Byam, who has to give up his wife, basically, that he loves dearly, in order to sail back with the boat. And so it's really told through the first book, Mutiny on the Bounty, is told through his eyes. And especially for a young man, it is incredibly romantic, while at the same time the adventure is so stirring. And so there have been at least 2 movie versions made of the Mutiny on the Bounty. The first one starred Charles Laughton as Bligh, and Claudette Colbert, and It Happened One Night, Clark Gable as Fletcher Christian. Classic version of Mutiny on the Bounty, still holds up today. So if I piqued your interest at all, I encourage you to watch that movie. It's a 1930s black and white movie. If you want something more up to date, so in the, I believe, 1980s, there was a newer version made, just called The Bounty, starring Anthony Hopkins as Bligh, and the Lethal Weapon guy. I can think of all the movies he's done, but I can't come up with his name. Very, very famous actor of the day, playing Fletcher Christian, and I had it in my head, and now it's gone away. See, this is what drinking a Tahitian breeze will do for you. It makes your mind go away. Mel Gibson plays Fletcher Christian, and the first time I saw it, I didn't like it because it was very different than the book and the original movie. But the more times I watched it, the more I liked it, because it really brought out more of the actual history of the Mutiny on the Bounty, because it really was, it was not the one-sided situation that it's been, the way that it's been painted through history, where Bligh was this horrible tyrant, he was viciously cruel, and Fletcher was this good man who basically incited the mutiny for the good of the crew. It was not that black and white a situation at all. there's certainly an argument to be made that Fletcher Christian's behavior was very selfish, and that Lieutenant Bligh's behavior was no more harsh than was typical for the Royal Navy at that time. And over the years, I've really come to enjoy the movie The Bounty with Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins a lot. And there's other great actors in the movie as well. So, as we here in North America head into winter and longer nights, colder nights, I think it's a nice idea to sit back with maybe some kind of South Seas cocktail and an adventure tale, maybe with the fire on, and take ourselves away from the workaday world and relax in another time and another place. So whether it's kidnapped, by Stevenson, or Treasure Island, or whether it's The Call of the Wild, whether it's The Heart of Darkness, whether it's John McNabb. Well, I hope you'll consider Mutiny on the Bounty. I think it's the greatest. Well, the book here says the greatest sea story of all time. I think that's true. I think it's the greatest adventure novel of all time. And it will really give you, I think, a great deal of enjoyment and relaxation, and recharge you to go back into real life, after the weekend is over. So that's my journey to the South Seas. I mean, maybe you can feel some trees swaying. You can sense some white sand, or even some black volcanic sand pushing through your toes as you walk barefoot on the beach. Maybe there's some coconut palms, and you can think about drinking some coconut milk straight from a coconut, and splitting it open and eating the luscious coconut meat inside, and maybe just relaxing on the beach and watching the sunset. These are all wonderful activities, memories I have of being in Tahiti. Riding horses on the beach. I remember doing that with a fellow I met there, and it's really a magical place. So, wishing you, on behalf of Jiggers' Place, all the joy of the season, especially to my Christian friends. I'm wishing you a very, very happy Christmas, since we're in an English mode, and a new year of good health and success. And next week, I have an abbreviated schedule. I'll have a Trust and Estates Weekly on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific. That'll be our last show for the year on Trust and Estates Weekly. And then on Tuesday, which is Christmas Eve, I'll have a special edition. And I'm going to be doing, like I do in all the special editions, in this case, a special show for Christmas. And you may think it's a little bit strange that a rabbi is doing a Christmas special, but it's my way of communing with all my Christian friends out there, and all the people who celebrate Christmas and bring the feelings of the season to all the rest of us. I particularly enjoy this time of year. So thank you so much for joining me, especially those of you who are live. Always great to know that we're together, and wish you a wonderful evening. It's evening everywhere now, even here on the West Coast. And I wish you a wonderful rest of the week, a wonderful weekend. Look forward to seeing you next week, and signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my belle. Courage at all times, my friends.